The massive chamber stretched out like a metal canyon, its walls rising so high they disappeared into shadows above. Thousands of beings filled the curved seats that wrapped around the central speaking platform. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others breathed methane through tubes connected to their chairs. A few glowed with their own inner light. Ambassador Kyung-ho stood at the center of it all, his human form looking small among the giants and strange creatures around him. His dark suit was simple compared to the elaborate costumes and natural displays of the alien delegates. But everyone in the chamber knew who he was. For 30 years, he had been the voice that kept peace between species that had nothing in common except their ability to hate each other. Today felt different. The air itself seemed to buzz with anger and fear. "The Valerian Empire has stolen from us!" The voice boomed across the chamber like thunder. Speaker Vex Prime rose from his seat, his crystalline body catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns on the walls. His people, the Thex, looked like living gems, but had tempers hotter than their home star. They mine our asteroids. They take our metals. They laugh at our protests. From the opposite side of the chamber, a sound like grinding metal filled the air. Ambassador Krill 9 of the Valerians stood up, her insect-like body clicking as she moved. "Lies. The asteroids belong to no one. We found them first. We worked them first. The Thex are lazy and now they cry like younglings." The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. Some banged their appendages on their desks. Others released clouds of colored gas that meant anger in their cultures. The universal translators worked overtime, filling everyone's ears with overlapping voices of rage. Kyung-ho raised his hand. Slowly, the noise died down. This was the power humans had somehow gained over the centuries. Not through weapons or threats, but through their strange ability to make others listen. "Friends," Kyung-ho said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "We have solved problems like this before. The Omega Sector has resources enough for both your peoples. If we divide the mining rights fairly—" "No!" Vex Prime's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Humans always say divide fairly. But who decides what is fair? You. Why should soft-skinned creatures who have never mined a single asteroid tell us how to share our treasures?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the Thex delegation. Kyung-ho felt his stomach tighten. In 3 decades of diplomatic work, he had never heard such direct challenge to human authority. Krill 9's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of excitement among her people. "The Valerian Empire agrees with the crystal beings for once. Humans interfere too much. You make us weak by solving our problems for us. We were strong before you came. We will be strong after you leave." High above the main floor, Jae-won watched through the reinforced glass of the observation deck. As Earth's Secretary of Galactic Affairs, he had seen thousands of these sessions. But this one made his hands shake. The alliance that had held the galaxy together for generations was cracking right in front of him. "Sir," his aide whispered, "the crystalline hegemony delegation is requesting private audience." Jae-won nodded without taking his eyes off the scene below. The hegemony controlled 12 star systems and commanded fleets that could level planets. If they were asking for private meetings during a crisis, something big was coming. Down on the chamber floor, more delegates began standing. The Methane Collective's representative, a being that looked like living gas in a containment suit, spoke in chemical pulses that the translators turned into words. "Perhaps the insect people and crystal people speak truth. Humans have made us dependent. We forget how to solve problems without human words." Kyung-ho felt sweat on his forehead despite the chamber's cool air. "The system has worked for centuries. Peace, trade, cooperation. Why change what brings prosperity to all?" "Because it is not our prosperity." The new voice belonged to Chancellor Veith of the hegemony. The ancient being had ruled his people for longer than humans had known about space travel. When he spoke, entire fleets obeyed. It is prosperity built on human permission, human approval, human solutions to every problem. What happens when humans decide they no longer want to help us? The question hung in the air like poison gas. Around the chamber, delegates who had been arguing with each other suddenly looked at Kyung-ho with new expressions. Not the respect and hope he was used to seeing something else. Fear. And maybe anger. Council Speaker Thranks stood up from his central chair, his reptilian features twisted with what might have been disgust. The speaker was supposed to be neutral, but his next words shattered that pretense. Forever. The human problem has grown beyond control, Thranks said, his forked tongue flicking out as he spoke. Every dispute comes to human ears. Every trade agreement needs human approval. Every war stops when humans say stop. We have become children, and humans have become our parents. This is not the way of proud species. Kyung-ho's heart hammered in his chest. Speaker, with respect, the system is broken! Thranks's voice rose to a roar. Because humans broke it! You created dependency among us. You made us weak. Perhaps it is time for humans to step back and let the galaxy grow strong. Again. The chamber erupted again, but this time it was different. Instead of arguing with each other, the aliens were looking at Kyung-ho. Some with anger, some with fear, others with something that might have been shame. In her laboratory aboard the human research station orbiting the chamber, Dr. Soo-jin watched the live feed while her computers analyzed the emotional patterns of the speakers. The data made her feel sick. After decades of studying alien psychology, she could see what others missed. The galaxy's species had grown so used to human mediation that they had forgotten how to negotiate directly with each other. Remove humans from the equation, and they would not know how to prevent war. But they were too proud to admit it. So instead of asking for help, they were pushing away the very people who kept them from destroying each other. Her fingers flew over the keyboard as she prepared her report for Earth Command. The galaxy was about to make a terrible mistake, and humanity might be about to make an even worse one. Back in the chamber, Kyung-ho made one last attempt. Please, fellow beings of the stars, we have built something beautiful together, peace, between species who once saw each other as enemies or strangers. Trade routes that bring prosperity to worlds that once knew only poverty. Scientific discoveries that could never have happened without cooperation. Do not throw this away in anger. Vex Prime's crystalline form seemed to grow brighter. We throw nothing away. We take back what was always ours. The right to succeed or fail without human interference. The vote, when it came, was not even close. 437 species voted for the resolution calling on humanity to reduce its involvement in galactic affairs to a level appropriate for a single-member species. Only 12 voted against. Even some of humanity's oldest allies abstained. Kyung-ho stood alone on the speaking platform as the vote was announced. Around him, beings he had worked with for decades avoided his eyes. The great experiment in galactic cooperation was ending not with war or conquest, but with a simple request for humanity to mind its own business. 3 hours later, Admiral Dong-woo received Kyung-ho's report aboard the battleship Seoul's Honor, stationed at the edge of the Sol system. The old soldier read it twice before calling Earth Command. "It's finished," he said into the secure channel. "They want us gone." The response came back in less than a minute, direct from the president's office. "Then we go. Effective immediately. All human personnel are withdrawn from galactic institutions. All treaties requiring human mediation are suspended. All joint operations are terminated. We're going home." The order went out across the galaxy within hours, on thousands of worlds, in hundreds of space stations, aboard countless ships. Humans began packing. They left behind laboratories full of ongoing experiments. They abandoned trade posts that had operated for generations. They closed embassies that had been second homes to diplomats and their families. And as they left, many of them wondered the same thing. The galaxy had asked humanity to step back. But did they understand what they were really asking for? In 6 months, they would find out. 6 months had passed since the last human left the Galactic Council chambers. Across the galaxy, celebrations continued on dozens of worlds. The Thecs had declared a month-long festival of independence. The Valerian Empire held parades showing their mighty fleets free from human influence. Even the normally quiet Methane Collective released colorful gas clouds in patterns that meant joy. Chancellor Vith stood on the balcony of his crystal palace, looking out at the celebrations in his capital city. His people danced in the streets, their crystalline bodies creating light shows that could be seen from orbit. "Finally," he said to his aide, "we are free to make our own choices. No more human voices telling us what is right or wrong." But the first cracks in the celebration appeared sooner than anyone expected. The Korthak delegation arrived at the neutral station crossroads, expecting a simple trade meeting. They were a proud warrior species, known for their straightforward ways and powerful builds. Their leader, War Chief Brock, had negotiated with humans many times before. Humans understood that when Korthaks showed their weapons, it was a sign of respect, not a threat. The Axiom delegation did not understand this. The Axioms were peaceful traders who had never fought a war in their recorded history. To them, weapons were tools of murder, not symbols of honor. When the Korthaks entered the meeting room with their ceremonial blades displayed, the Axiom leader, Harmony Singer Vel, took it as a threat to kill everyone in the room. "You bring death tools to a peace meeting!" Vel's voice shook with fear and anger. "This is how you show respect? By threatening to kill us?" War Chief Brock's face darkened. In his culture, questioning someone's honor was an insult that could only be answered with violence. "You soft-skinned traitors know nothing of respect. These blades have been blessed by our ancestors. To call them tools of murder is to spit on our fathers' graves." Within minutes, both delegations were shouting. The Korthaks thought the Axioms were being deliberately insulting. The Axioms thought the Korthaks were planning to attack them. Without human translators who understood both cultures, neither side could explain their real meaning to the other. The meeting ended when the Axioms fled the station, convinced they had barely escaped with their lives. The Korthaks left believing the Axioms had shown them the worst insult possible. Two species that had traded peacefully for 50 years suddenly saw each other as enemies. Similar problems erupted across the galaxy. The Draconian Assembly tried to negotiate shipping rights with the Biosynth Collective, but Draconians considered direct eye contact a challenge to fight, while Biosynths saw looking away as a sign of lying. Without humans to explain these differences, both sides became convinced the other was being hostile. On the research station New Sol, Dr. Minho packed the last of his equipment into storage containers. The station orbited a beautiful blue planet where 12 different species had worked together for 30 years. They had discovered new medicines, mapped unknown parts of space, and solved scientific puzzles that no single species could handle, alone. Now, it was ending. "Dr. Minho," his assistant Dr. Ha Young said softly, "the Zephyrian research team wants to continue the gravity wave project on their own." Minho shook his head sadly. "They cannot. Half the equipment needs crystalline, hegemony power cores. The other half requires Valerian biocomputers, but the hegemony and Valerians are not talking to each other anymore, not without human mediators." Through the station's large windows, they could see alien research ships leaving one by one. Scientists, who had been friends for decades, said goodbye, not knowing when they would see each other again. Projects that could have changed the galaxy forever were abandoned because no one could coordinate between different species anymore. Ha-Young looked at a list on her tablet. 17 joint research projects canceled this month, 43. Trade agreements suspended because no one can negotiate new terms. The Epsilon shipping route is completely blocked because 3 different species claim the same rights. In space, the problems were getting worse. Captain Wu Jin commanded the merchant ship Star of Busan, carrying goods between human and alien worlds. His ship had always been welcome everywhere because humans were trusted by all sides. Now he received warning messages daily. Human vessel. Star of Busan, came a transmission from a Thex patrol ship. You are entering disputed space. The crystal beings of Thex claim this region. Turn back or face consequences. An hour later, a different message. Merchant ship, this is Valerian Imperial Fleet. These space lanes belong to the Empire by right of conquest. Humans are no longer protected here. Leave immediately. Wu Jin studied his star charts. The shipping route he had used for 20 years was now claimed by 4 different species. Each one had valid historical claims. Each one was willing to fight to keep others out. But without human mediators, there was no way to solve the problem peacefully. Captain, his navigator said, if we cannot use the main routes, shipping costs will triple. Most trade between alien worlds will become too expensive. The captain nodded grimly. Send message to Earth Command. Recommend all human traders avoid alien space until this crisis ends. But the crisis was just beginning. The real trouble started in the Epsilon system, where a minor disagreement became the first sign of the chaos to come. The Draconian Assembly had always controlled the main space station there, but they rented docking space to methane collective ships. It was a simple arrangement that had worked for decades. Then the collective ships started arriving 2 days early, before the Draconians expected them. In Draconian culture, early arrival meant you did not trust the host to be ready on time. It was an insult. But in methane collective culture, arriving early showed enthusiasm and respect for the meeting. Without humans to explain the misunderstanding, both sides became angry. The Draconians refused to let the collective ships dock. The collective captains thought the Draconians were breaking their agreement. Soon, both sides had called in military ships to protect their rights. Captain Yun Su of the human starship Incheon Pride was passing through the system when the shooting started. Her ship picked up the distress signals as Draconian fighters attacked a collective transport, thinking it was trying to ram the station. The collective escorts returned fire, thinking the Draconians were trying to steal their cargo. This is Captain Yun Su of the Terran vessel Incheon Pride, she broadcast on all frequencies. Both fleets cease firing immediately. This is clearly a misunderstanding that can be resolved peacefully. But her words only made things worse. The Draconian fleet commander sent an angry reply. Human ship, your people are no longer welcome in our disputes. You have taught us to be weak for too long. We solve our own problems now. The collective commander was equally hostile. Humans created this mess by making us dependent on their words. Now they want to interfere again? No. We fight our own battles. Yun Su watched helplessly as the battle grew larger. More ships arrived on both sides. The space station, home to thousands of beings from dozens of species, was caught in the middle. Its shields failed under the crossfire. Evacuation pods scattered into space as the station began breaking apart. By the time the fighting ended 12 hours later, the station was destroyed. Over 3,000 beings were dead. The survivors floated in space in emergency pods, waiting for rescue that came too slowly. The Epsilon incident, as historians would later call it, was just the beginning. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within days. Other species began to worry about their own agreements and territories. Old fears and suspicions, held back for decades by human mediation, began to surface. The Plutonium Federation decided they needed better defenses against possible draconian aggression. The Silicon Sovereignty worried that their trade routes might be next. Even peaceful species began building warships just in case. On Earth, Admiral Dongwu read the reports with growing concern. It has been 6 months, he told his staff. The alien species wanted their independence. They said they could handle their own problems, but now they are shooting at each other over misunderstandings that any human diplomat could solve in 5 minutes. His aide, Colonel Hyun-soo, pointed to the star charts on the wall. Red markers showed locations where tensions were building. Yellow markers showed trade disputes. There were too many to count. "Sir, should we offer to help mediate these conflicts?" Dongwoo was quiet for a long moment. "They voted us out, Colonel. They said they did not need us anymore. Maybe they have to learn the hard way that some problems cannot be solved with pride and good intentions." But even as he spoke, both men knew that the galaxy was heading toward something much worse than trade disputes and hurt feelings. Without humans to keep the peace, old hatreds were awakening. Species that had not fought for centuries were remembering why they used to be enemies. The celebrations were ending. The real test was about to begin. And in the cold depths of space, more distress signals were already starting to broadcast. 2 years had passed since humans left the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was on fire. Commander Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of Earth Defense Station Alpha, watching the news feeds from across known space. Every screen showed the same thing: war, destruction, and chaos spreading like a disease from system to system. "Commander," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving another distress signal. This one from the Proxima Cluster. The Zephyrian refugee fleet is under attack by Korthak raiders." Hyun-woo closed his eyes for a moment. The Zephyrians had been peaceful traders for centuries. Their homeworld was beautiful, covered in floating cities that moved with the wind. Now those cities were smoking ruins, and their people fled through space in whatever ships they could find. "How many refugee ships?" he asked. 743 vessels, sir. Mostly civilian transports. 2 million beings aboard, including younglings. The commander felt sick. 2 million innocent people running for their lives because their world had become a battlefield, and Earth could do nothing to help without breaking their promise to stay out of galactic affairs. The Great Spiral Arm War had started with something stupid. A Plutonium Federation science ship had sent a research probe into what they thought was empty space. But the Biosynth Collective considered that region sacred to their ancestors. The probe's scanning beams damaged some ancient monuments that the biosynths had left there thousands of years ago. In the old days, humans would have arranged a meeting. The Federation would have apologized and paid to repair the monuments. The biosynths would have accepted the apology and maybe asked for a small favor in return. Problem solved in a week. Instead, the biosynths demanded the Federation destroy their entire research fleet as punishment. The Federation refused and said the biosynths were being unreasonable. Within a month, both sides were shooting at each other. Within 6 months, their allies had joined the fight. Now the war involved dozens of species spread across half the galaxy. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, engineer So Young supervised the evacuation of Proxima Research Complex. The facility had been humanity's most advanced science station outside of Sol System. Scientists from 30 different species had worked there on projects that could have benefited the entire galaxy. "All personnel to evacuation ships," her voice echoed through the corridors. "This is not a drill. All research materials must be secured or destroyed. We have less than 6 hours before the crystalline hegemony fleet arrives." The hegemony had declared the entire Proxima system a security zone after Thex raiders attacked one of their convoys nearby. It did not matter that the research station was neutral. It did not matter that the scientists there were working on medical cures for diseases that affected dozens of species. The hegemony wanted control of the system, and they would destroy anything that got in their way. So Young watched as scientists packed up decades of research in desperate hurry. Dr. Kim Seo, who had spent 20 years studying alien plant biology, held a container of seeds that could grow food on barren worlds. "These could feed billions," he said sadly, "but there is no safe place to continue the work." "I know," So Young replied, "but if we stay, we die. If we die, the research dies with us." The evacuation ships lifted off just as the first hegemony warships appeared on the horizon. So-Young watched through the transport's windows as the research complex exploded under bombardment. 20 years of scientific progress vanished in minutes. On Earth, President Yu Jin faced the hardest decision of her life. The Seoul Accords had been signed by every major Earth government, promising that humanity would not interfere in galactic politics no matter what happened. The agreement had been popular when the galaxy seemed stable. Now, with millions dying in wars that humans could easily stop, many people questioned whether isolation was the right choice. "Madam President," her military advisor said during the emergency meeting, "we have the power to end these conflicts tomorrow. Our fleets are still the strongest in the galaxy. Our diplomats understand all these species better than they understand each other. We could restore peace in months." Yujin looked at the reports piled on her desk. Each one described another tragedy. The Methane Collective had used chemical weapons against draconian civilians. The Silicon Sovereignty had destroyed an entire moon to prevent their enemies from mining it. 3 species had gone extinct when their homeworlds were caught in crossfire. "And if we intervene," she said slowly, "what happens next? Do we become the galaxy's permanent police force? Do we make the same mistake again, solving everyone's problems until they cannot survive without us?" Her advisor shifted uncomfortably. "The alternative is watching the galaxy destroy itself." Before Yu Jin could answer, an aide burst into the room. "Madam President, urgent message from Admiral Tae-ho. The freighter Busan has been destroyed." The room went silent. The Busan had been carrying medical supplies to refugee camps on the edge of human space. It was clearly marked as a humanitarian vessel. Its destruction meant that human civilians were now targets. "Who attacked it?" Yu Jin asked. "Korthak raiders. They claimed the ship was carrying weapons to their enemies. 37 crew members are dead." Yujin felt anger rise in her chest. The Korthaks had been allied with humanity for decades. Their children had studied in Earth schools. Their artists had performed in human theaters. Now they were killing human civilians based on paranoid fears. "Madam President," the military advisor said quietly, "if we do not respond, more human ships will be attacked. These species are becoming desperate, and desperate beings do terrible things." Across the galaxy, the situation grew worse every day. Dr. Jinnah, now Earth's Minister of Xenological Affairs, published her latest report on the crisis. The numbers were horrifying. 40% of all interspecies trade had collapsed. Scientific collaboration between different species had dropped by 60%. Over 1 billion beings had become refugees. But the worst part was the technology loss. Many of the galaxy's greatest advances had come from combining the knowledge of different species. Valerian biocomputers worked with crystalline power cores to create faster-than-light communication. Thex mining techniques used draconian metallurgy to extract resources from impossible places. Human engineering connected all the pieces together. Now, as the wars spread, these connections were breaking. The communication network that linked thousands of worlds was failing. Ships that needed parts from enemy species were abandoned. Entire industries shut down because the supply chains crossed battle lines. The breaking point came at the Battle of the Neutron Gates. The gates were an ancient wonder, built by some long-dead species millions of years ago. They were massive rings of metal and energy that allowed instant travel between distant parts of the galaxy. 7 different species claimed the right to control them, and all 7 brought their fleets to settle the matter by force. The battle lasted for 18 hours. Ships from the Hegemony, the Federation, the Assembly, the Collective, the Sovereignty, the Empire, and the Confederation all fought in the same space at the same time. The energy weapons created storms of lightning that could be seen from nearby star systems. The explosions were so massive they disturbed the fabric of space itself. When it was over, the gates were gone. The ancient technology that had connected the galaxy for thousands of years was destroyed. Worse, the battle had damaged space itself in that region. Ships trying to use faster-than-light travel near the former gates simply disappeared. Commander, Hyunwoo received the report while standing in the observation deck of the defense station. The gates had been neutral territory for as long as anyone could remember. They were one of the galaxy's greatest treasures, a reminder that different species could accomplish amazing things when they worked together. "Sir," his aide said softly, "the destruction of the gates will increase travel time between the outer rim and core worlds by 300%. Some colonies will be completely cut off." Hyunwoo nodded slowly. "And without the gates, refugee fleets cannot escape the war zones quickly enough. More will die trying to reach safety." He looked out at the stars, remembering when they had seemed full of hope and wonder. Now they looked cold and empty. The galaxy was tearing itself apart, and Earth could only watch. "Sir," the aide continued, "we are receiving more requests for human mediation. The Zephyrian Emergency Government, the Moderate Coalition, even some hegemony nobles. They all want us to return." "What are they offering?" "Everything, sir. Permanent seats on all governing bodies, complete autonomy for human space, control of major trade routes. Some are even offering to make humans the supreme authority over galactic affairs." Hyunwoo almost laughed, but it would not have been funny. 2 years ago, these same species had demanded that humans mind their own business. They had called human mediation weakness and interference. Now, with their worlds burning and their people dying, they wanted humans to become their rulers. "Send the same reply to all of them," he said. "Humanity appreciates their offers, but we will honor our commitment to non-interference." But even as he spoke the words, Hyunwoo wondered how long Earth could maintain that position. The galaxy was descending into chaos faster than anyone had imagined. 5 years after humanity left the Galactic Council, the galaxy stood on the edge of complete destruction. Captain Junseo guided his reconnaissance ship Soul's Pride through the ruins of what had once been the Centauri trade hub. The massive space station had been home to 10 million beings from 100 different worlds. Now it was nothing but twisted metal and frozen air, spinning slowly in the darkness. "Captain," his scanner officer reported, "I am detecting life signs in Section 7. Looks like a few hundred survivors in an emergency shelter." Junseo studied the readings on his screen. The survivors had been trapped for months, maybe years. Their supplies were almost gone, but Soul's Pride was on a secret mission for Earth. Command, and stopping to help could expose their presence to the war fleets that patrolled this area. "Sir," his navigator said quietly, "if we do not help them, they will die." Junseo closed his eyes. This was the choice humans faced every day now: save lives and risk breaking their promise to stay out of galactic affairs, or watch innocent people die to preserve their isolation. "Launch rescue pods," he ordered. "We will take the survivors to the nearest neutral station, but we do not make contact with any military forces. Our mission continues." The mission was to assess just how bad the galactic situation had become. What Junseo found horrified him. Entire star systems had gone dark, their suns blocked by debris from massive space battles. Trade routes that had carried goods for centuries were now graveyards of destroyed ships. Refugee fleets drifted through empty space, their fuel exhausted and their people starving. In the Omega sector, the Second Cascade War had begun when the Silicon Sovereignty made a desperate choice. Facing defeat by a coalition of their enemies, they had activated an ancient weapon left behind by some long-dead species. The weapon was a planet killer, designed to destroy whole worlds by making their suns go supernova. The sovereignty leaders had not understood what they were unleashing. The weapon did not just destroy one world, it created a chain reaction that spread to nearby star systems. 3 suns had already exploded, killing billions of beings and making entire regions of space uninhabitable. Dr. Yan Ho studied the data from her laboratory on Luna Base, Earth's moon. As humanity's leading expert on galactic sociology, she had predicted this disaster years ago. But seeing her predictions come true gave her no satisfaction. "It is exactly what I warned about," she told her research team. "When you remove a keystone species from an ecosystem, the entire system collapses. Humans were not just mediators. We were the species that kept all the others from destroying each other." Her assistant, Dr. Sang Min, looked at the star charts, showing the expanding zone of destruction. "Can the chain reaction be stopped?" "Yes, but it would require cooperation between at least a dozen species. They would need to share technology, coordinate their efforts, and trust each other completely. In other words, it would require exactly the kind of cooperation that humans used to make possible." Yanho turned back to her computer, working on calculations that might never be used. "The weapon will continue spreading for another 6 months before it burns itself out. By then, it will have consumed 17 star systems and killed over 1 trillion beings." On Titan Base, Admiral Sung Min received a transmission that he had been expecting for months, but still dreaded. The emergency coalition, formed from the few remaining moderate voices in the galaxy, was making one final plea for human intervention. The message came from Chancellor Veith himself, the same being who had demanded human withdrawal 5 years earlier. But the proud leader who had once commanded respect across the galaxy now looked broken and desperate. "Admiral Sung Min," Vith's recorded voice said, "I speak for what remains of civilized species in the galaxy. We were wrong. We were fools. We thought we could maintain peace without human guidance. We were children, playing with weapons we did not understand." The transmission showed the devastation behind Veith's words. His crystal cities were dark, their lights extinguished by power failures. His people wandered the streets like ghosts, their natural glow dimmed by hunger and despair. "The Coalition offers humanity complete authority over galactic affairs," Veith continued. "Not as mediators or advisors, but as rulers. We will accept human law, human justice, human command over our fleets and worlds. We ask only that you save what can still be saved." Sung Min played the message 3 times before calling Earth Command. Other species had made similar offers, but this was different. Veith spoke for 200 surviving worlds, including some of the galaxy's most powerful remaining fleets. If Earth accepted, humans would become the undisputed masters of known space. The response from President Yu Jin was immediate. "We do not want to rule the galaxy, Admiral. We wanted to help it grow strong. But perhaps the time has come to make a choice." That choice became urgent when the crisis reached Sol system itself. General Jiwan was inspecting Earth's orbital defenses when the first refugee ships appeared at the edge of human space. Not a few dozen vessels, but thousands. Entire species fleeing the expanding zones of destruction. "General," his communications officer reported, "the lead ship is broadcasting a message from the Zephyrian Emergency Government. They are requesting sanctuary for their entire surviving population." Jiwan looked at the scanner readings. Over 2 million beings in ships that were falling apart. Many were the same Zephyrians who had celebrated when humans left the Galactic Council. Now they came seeking help from the species they had rejected. "Sir, long-range sensors detect more fleets approaching. Axiom survivors, methane collective refugees, even some Thex crystal ships. They are all heading for Earth." The general felt the weight of impossible decisions. Earth could not feed and shelter millions of alien refugees. But could they turn away people who had nowhere else to go? "Open a channel to the lead ship," he ordered. The face that appeared on the screen was ancient and tired. Elder Zara 9 of the Zephyrians had been one of the beings who voted for human withdrawal. Now she looked like she had aged a century in 5 years. "General G1," she said, "my people are dying. Our homeworld is gone, destroyed in the Cascade reaction. Our colony worlds are battlefields. We have nowhere else to go. I know we have no right to ask for your help after what we did. But I beg you, in the name of whatever friendship once existed between our species, please give sanctuary to our younglings. Let the adults die if you must, but save the children." G1 closed the channel and immediately called President Eugene. The choice was no longer about galactic politics or diplomatic principles. It was about survival itself. The emergency session of Earth's leadership lasted 18 hours. Representatives from every major nation argued about humanity's responsibility to the galaxy and to themselves. Some demanded that Earth's borders remain closed. Others insisted that humanity had a moral duty to help. Ambassador In Young, who had served as humanity's chief diplomat before the withdrawal, made the argument that would determine the galaxy's future. "We face a choice that will define what humanity becomes," she told the assembly. "We can watch the galaxy burn and preserve our safety, or we can accept the role that fate has given us, not as conquerors or rulers, but as teachers and guardians." She pointed to the displays showing the expanding destruction. "If we do nothing, within 10 years, there will be no galactic civilization left to save. The surviving species will retreat to their homeworlds and forget that they ever reached for the stars. Humanity will rule over a graveyard." President Eugene stood up slowly. "And if we intervene, then we accept responsibility for rebuilding something better than what came before. Not the old system where species depended on us for everything, but a new one where we teach them to stand on their own." The vote was close. 51% in favor of limited intervention. Earth would provide sanctuary for refugees and offer mediation services to any species that requested them. But there would be conditions. Strict conditions. In Young was chosen as Emergency Galactic Mediator, a position created specifically for the crisis. She would have broad powers to coordinate relief efforts and negotiate ceasefires. But her mandate was clear: help the galaxy learn to help itself. As the first refugee ships docked with Earth's orbital stations, In Young looked out at the stars and wondered if humanity was making the right choice. The galaxy had rejected them once before. Would it accept their help now? Or would this intervention just create new dependencies and new problems? Outside her window, alien children pressed their faces against the transport windows, seeing Earth for the first time. Whatever mistakes had been made, whatever disasters lay ahead, those children deserved a chance to grow up in a galaxy where different species could live in peace. The hardest work was just beginning. And in the depths of space, more distress signals continued to broadcast, calling out to anyone who might still be listening. 7 years had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council, and 2 years since their return to galactic affairs. The universe was slowly healing, but the scars would remain forever. Director Sang Ho walked through the halls of the Terran Mediation Institute on Luna Base, watching students from dozens of species learn the art of peaceful negotiation. In one classroom, young Zephyrians practiced understanding Korthak honor customs. In another, crystalline hegemony diplomats learned why methane collective beings released certain gases when they were nervous. "Director," his assistant said, approaching. "With a data pad, the latest graduation results are ready. 87% of students passed their final mediation exams." Sang Ho nodded with satisfaction. "And how many are ready for independent assignments?" 62%, sir. The rest will need more training before they can handle conflicts without human supervision." It was progress. Slow progress, but progress nonetheless. When the Institute had opened 2 years ago, most alien students could not even recognize basic emotional signals from other species. Now they were learning to prevent wars before they started. The Institute was humanity's answer to the old problem of dependency. Instead of solving every galactic problem themselves, humans now taught others how to solve problems. It was harder work and took longer, but it created lasting change instead of temporary fixes. On the bridge of the starship New Seoul, Ambassador Kyung-ho prepared for what might be his most important mission yet. At 73 years old, he had seen the galaxy rise to greatness, fall into chaos, and begin to rebuild. Now he was returning to the place where it all began, the reformed Galactic Council chambers. "Ambassador," Captain Lee Hoon reported, "we are approaching Nexus Station. The new council building is complete and ready for the ceremony." Through the ship's viewports, Kyung-ho could see the massive construction project that had taken 2 years to complete. The new Galactic Council building was different from the old one. Instead of a single chamber where all species gathered, there were many smaller meeting rooms connected by corridors. The design forced delegates to walk past each other and interact, informally, building relationships that made formal negotiations easier. But the most important change was not visible from space. The new council operated under the Terran Charter, a set of rules that humanity had written based on 7 years of watching what happened when those rules did not exist. The Charter's most important rule was simple. No single species could hold too much power over the others, not even humans. Earth had representation in the council, but they could not outvote the other species when they worked together. This prevented the old problem of dependency while still allowing human expertise to guide difficult decisions. Captain Jun-ho commanded the first joint peacekeeping fleet, a mixed force of ships from 12 different species. His flagship was human-built, but his crew included beings from across the galaxy. They had just returned from the Proxima sector, where they had successfully stopped a border dispute before it became a war. "Captain," his Zephyrian communications officer reported, "we have received thanks from both the Axiom Trade Federation and the Draconian Assembly. They say our mediation saved thousands of lives." Junho smiled. 6 months ago, both species had been preparing for battle over mining rights in an asteroid field. The old Galactic Council would have assigned human mediators to solve the problem. The new system was different. Instead of humans telling both sides what to do, the peacekeeping fleet had brought in crystalline hegemony legal experts who understood mining law, methane collective economists who could calculate fair resource sharing, and Thex engineers who could design new mining techniques that would benefit everyone. The humans on Junho's ship had coordinated the process and made sure all the different experts could work together. But the actual solution had come from alien minds, not human ones. This meant both sides felt ownership of the agreement and were more likely to honor it. "Set course for Earth," Junho ordered. "Command wants us back for the memorial ceremony." Engineer. Young Mai stood before the completed reconstruction of the neutron gates, humanity's greatest engineering project since the return to galactic affairs. The original gates had been destroyed in the massive battle 5 years earlier, cutting off large portions of the galaxy from each other. Rebuilding them had required cooperation between every major species and several minor ones. Valerian biocomputers provided the processing power. Crystalline hegemony power cores supplied the energy. Thex metallurgy created the physical structure. Human engineering connected all the pieces and made them work together. But this time, the gates belonged to everyone, not just humanity. Each species had contributed essential components, which meant no single group could control galactic transportation. More importantly, every species now understood how the gates worked. If they were ever destroyed again, any advanced species could help rebuild them. "Young Mi," her Korthak assistant called out, "the final calibration is complete. The gates are ready for the opening ceremony." She nodded, watching as the massive rings of metal and energy began to glow. In a few hours, the first ships would pass through, reconnecting parts of the galaxy that had been isolated for years. Trade would resume. Families separated by the chaos would be reunited. The galaxy would truly be one community again. President Ha Jin stood at the podium in the reformed Galactic Council chambers, looking out at delegates from over 300 species. Many were the same beings who had voted humanity out of Galactic affairs 7 years ago. Others were new faces, representing species that had barely survived the chaos that followed. "Fellow beings of the stars," she began, "we gather today not to celebrate humanity's return, but to remember why we must never again allow the galaxy to fracture as it did." The president gestured to the memorial wall behind her, where the names of every being who had died during the chaos years were inscribed in their native languages. Billions of names covered the wall from floor to ceiling, a reminder of the price of pride and independence taken too far. "Humanity did not return to rule you," she continued. "We return to teach you what we have learned, that true strength comes not from standing alone, but from knowing when to ask for help and when to offer it." She paused, looking directly at Chancellor Vith, who sat in the front row. The once proud leader had aged greatly during the crisis, his crystalline body dimmed by loss and regret. But he was still here, still working to rebuild what had been. "Broken. The new galactic order will not depend on any single species," President Ha Jin said. "Not on human mediation, not on crystalline technology, not on Valerian resources. It will depend on all of us working together, each contributing our strengths and covering each other's weaknesses." In her laboratory on Earth, Dr. Su Jin watched the ceremony on her screen while working on her latest project. At 85 years old, she was too frail to travel to the council chambers, but her mind was still sharp. She had become the galaxy's leading expert on preventing the kind of collapse that had nearly destroyed civilization. Her current student was Dr. Min Jung, a brilliant young scientist who would soon take over the Galactic Stability Project. Min Jung had just returned from mediating a successful negotiation between two species that had been enemies for centuries. "Doctor," Min Jung said excitedly, "the Plutonium Federation and Biosynth Collective have signed a permanent peace treaty, and they did it without any human mediators in the room. Our students from the Institute coordinated everything." Sujin smiled. This was the goal they had worked toward for 7 years, a galaxy that could solve its own problems without human intervention, not because humans refused to help, but because help was no longer needed. "That is the 43rd major dispute resolved by non-human mediators this year," Sujin said. "I think we can finally say the galaxy has learned to take care of itself." Through her laboratory window, she could see the lights of the orbital stations where millions of alien refugees had found new homes. Many had chosen to stay near Earth even after their homeworlds were rebuilt. They had formed mixed communities where humans and aliens lived together as neighbors and friends. The galaxy was not the same as it had been before the crisis. Too much had been lost. Too many had died. But in some ways, it was better. The new civilization was stronger because it did not depend on any single species for its survival. It was more peaceful because every species had learned the true cost of war. On the observation deck of Luna Base, Ambassador In Young met with a group of young diplomats from the graduating class of the Mediation Institute. They came from a dozen different worlds, but they all shared the same dream, a galaxy where conflicts were solved with words instead of weapons. "Ambassador," one of the students asked, "what happens if another crisis like the Chaos Years occurs? Will humanity leave again if the galaxy asks us to?" In Young looked out at the stars, thinking of all the changes she had witnessed. "I hope," she said finally, "that if such a crisis comes, the galaxy will be strong enough to handle it together. Not because humans solve the problems, and not because humans refuse to help, but because every species has learned to be both independent and cooperative." She turned back to the students.